Hello?
Hey, Daniel Horowitz, how are you?
We're doing all right. I'm just really stuffed up, so I sound kind of funny.
Oh, that's all right, man. You sound good to me on this end, by the way. So, this is Bill.
Don't feel too good, but definitely glad to be with you today.
All right, cool. We'll go ahead and get this recorded here and started here.
Sure.
All right. Daniel Horowitz joins me once again. Daniel, it's been quite a while since we've talked, but every time I read one of your articles, man, I just think to myself, you've got to be one of the most hated guys when it comes to the establishment. They have no love for you whatsoever. The GOP establishment is just not a big fan of yours.
Absolutely. They certainly are not. But, what keeps me going is just all the emails we get from the country class, and I call them the country class as opposed to the ruling class guys, and people are saying, wow, that is exactly what I'm thinking. Who is giving voice to that? So, it's very humbling, but it's very encouraging that there are so many people out there that think like us and want to fight back against the establishment.
It's great to have that grassroots support, and we are seeing, especially this week with the State of the Union address coming up, with Barack Obama talking about amnesty. That's on the front burner once again. The latest piece from Matthew Boyle, I don't know if you caught that at Breitbart, but his piece pretty much spells out that the GOP establishment pretty much is doubling down on their efforts on amnesty, and any objections from House conservatives to focus on enforcement is getting ripped and ridiculed for the most part. So they're just really getting crazy in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, the immigration issue, more than anything else, really shows how we have one big oligarchy in Washington. There's no choice. There's no alternative viable second party. Everyone talks about a need for a third party. We don't have a second party. Obama's number one priority, and you're going to hear it in the State of the Union address, for the remainder of his term is to pass amnesty. And Republicans are saying their number one priority is to pass amnesty. I mean, so you got to ask yourself, well, why do we need a Republican Party then? And, what's really interesting about the immigration issue is, all things equal, GOP establishment sounds like they have a nice argument. On paper, it makes sense. Hey, we only control the House. Look, we can't really block Obamacare, block the debt ceiling, but wait until we get the Senate and the White House, then we'll really push conservative legislation. Now, obviously, we don't agree with that because James Madison vested the House with control of the purse, and indeed they do have the power to block bad stuff with just one House, right? Because, a debt ceiling increase needs all of government to agree. If you have just one branch saying, no, we will not raise another penny of debt until we force a balanced budget, they could do that. But nonetheless, let's grant them that. Let's say that it's too difficult to do that. So now, you mean to tell me that we could go with control of just the House and pass through new immigration legislation supposedly built upon conservative principles with Obama in the White House? To paraphrase John Boehner, are you kidding me?
Right. Good old Boehner. Oh, man, the orange man. I'll tell you what, he's up to no good. This new staff appointment that he has that everybody's talking about, how is this new staff appointment dealing with amnesty significant? Tell me a little bit about this lady.
Sure. Well, Rebecca Talent, I mean, she is the Navy SEAL of amnesty. I mean, she's been at the forefront of all the pushes for amnesty over the past decade. She was one of the primary authors, at least on a staff level, of that infamous Kennedy-McCain amnesty bill in 2006. So it's not by accident that you have the most powerful Republican in the House tapping this lady to be the immigration policy advisor during an election year. Thinking, well, wait a minute, where does that come from? I mean, picture Eric Cantor or John Boehner or Mitch McConnell appointing one of the head authors of Obamacare to be a healthcare policy advisor. I mean, if we're a Republican Party and we stand for different principles on immigration, well, we wouldn't expect to hire the person who's been propagating basically the Obama, Kennedy, Schumer line. But that's what he did, and it wasn't a coincidence because less than a few weeks later, we began to hear that there will indeed be a push for amnesty in 2014. So clearly that was calculated, it was deliberate, and at this point, It's kind of immutable. The ship already sailed on that. They will be pushing amnesty. The question is, what will we be doing as a party? Are we going to remain on the plantation and say, hey, we're just going to sit back during the primaries and then, vote for these guys because they're better than the Democrats in the general? Or are we going to actually mobilize and start supporting a number of good primary challengers so we could create the foundation for a viable alternative second party?
You have talked to Steve Deace before. You've been on his show. One of the things that he said recently that really got my attention was that only in a cult where you have to have somebody's back, you have to have the leader's back, kind of like the grassroots is expected to of the GOP establishment, but they don't have yours. It's a one-way street, and that's exactly what we're saying. It's almost like a cult-like mentality that we have to maintain if we're going to support these guys.
That is the egregious thing about the inter-party play for decades already. I mean, this has been going on since the Goldwater years. Every election cycle, you won't find rhinos in the trenches. It is always, the conservative party base that works so hard to volunteer, to donate, making those calls, knocking on doors to elect Republicans. And then upon assumption of power, these Republicans go in and disenfranchise the very people that helped them get elected. On the premise of supporting Republican values, they go and empower the Democrats. And then the irony is when we come in the primaries and say, hey, we got to replace these so we could have a viable alternative, the response is, you're helping the Democrats. So that's the thing. They want to have it both ways. They want to get in there and join the oligarchy, but they don't like it when we actually look for alternatives. And look, they're talking about putting out a statement of principles on immigration this week. Those principles we already know are going to reflect Obama's priorities of amnesty first, promises of enforcement later for the 10th time over the last 2 decades. We've heard that a number of times. If you look in the GOP platform, the Republican National Committee, when they convened in 2012, they established a platform. That is the only statement of principles on immigration for the Republican Party. That was crafted by the grassroots. These were delegates that were elected by the Republican voters, and I believe it's page 23 of that document. You go to the RNC website, it says something very different. It's very equivocal, that it's unequivocal that we will not push for any sort of legalization until we stop this cycle of open borders. Very simple. It's not that complicated. It's funny. Immigration is really different than any other issue. The solution is not complicated. Even the Democrats say they agree with us. They want a secure border. They want interior enforcement. They want visa tracking. They supposedly want it. Except the one catch is they tell us they'll give it to us after we give them the amnesty.
Yeah, just like they give us tax cuts, right, and spending cuts. Those promises, too, right? They're kind of tied in.
Yeah, we just give them the tax increase, and then they'll cut spending later.
Right. Now, one of the things that you mentioned, and National Journal is reporting on this, too, Boehner's proposal that he's going to announce is going to be very squishy and vague, so he doesn't get blamed for that. Tell me what that is going to accomplish and how that's going to allow him to not get all the heat.
What it appears, is their underlying strategy, and again, it's very fluid, and this could change by the day. But they're trying to float a trial balloon and say, you know what, we're going to go and placate the Chamber of Commerce, all our donors who obviously want a steady flow of cheap labor, and say, hey, we're really trying, but what can we do? These ruffians in our base are just stopping us. I mean, what can we do? But we badly want it. We're with you. So they're hoping that they give them enough money to get past the 2014 elections. And then the hope is, well, either way they win. If somehow they're able to roll the base, well, they get amnesty. If not, at least they show their donors that they tried, and then they'll come back in 2015. And remember, that's when Obama's going to be a lame duck president. He's going to be the most dangerous he's ever been. He's going to push amnesty very hard. He'll use administrative fiat if he has to, and it's up to us to have an alternative party to block him. And I think the question we all need to ask ourselves is this: everyone's talking about the need to win back the Senate, to get 51 Republicans in the Senate, but the question is, well, what do we what do we need 51 Republicans for? Do we need 51 Republicans to pass Obama's amnesty? Well, I mean, that is what's going to happen if we don't engage in the primaries. If we don't rebuild the GOP majority on the backs of real conservatives, and instead, basically add 5 more boring old establishment Republicans to the current failed crop of leadership, we will get amnesty. And that's what the base needs to know. And then once we get amnesty, it's all over. I mean, one thing people forget is that there's already reports of, the fact that border crossings are on the uptick now. And even more so, people are going to come here legally and overstay their visas. I mean, if you make it clear that you're no longer deporting and that anyone could potentially be eligible for status, well, I mean, look, they talk about how poor some of these people are, but they all have their Obama phones and they all are on social media. They'll tell all their friends and relatives elsewhere. And look, there's a lot of people who want to come to this country, and we understand why. But the bottom line is we can't afford it, that precipitously and that much of a huge growth of legal and illegal immigration in one shot with our welfare state. But they're going to take advantage of that, and it's us to stop that. And it's all about the primaries. If we don't get engaged in the primaries now, we will.
Daniel, I am going to let you go here because I think our cell phone connection is a little bit shaky here. If you can hear me, Kevin McCarthy and John Cornyn, I think these are some telling statements with what they have said about amnesty. If you'd like to touch on that before we leave, go ahead.
Yes, they have made it clear that they just need to get past the primaries. So at least we understand each other. The base understands that we need to engage in the primaries in order to stop this, and they understand that the only way of passing amnesty is to make an end run around us. And I would just ask everyone to step back and try to let that seep in how sad that is, the state of affairs within the Republican Party. The Democrat Party uses their base, they harness their power to advance their goals. Our party leadership uses the base as, just a bunch of worthless pawns during elections, and then makes end runs around them the rest of the year. The question is, are we going to continue putting up with that, or are we going to take back our party in the primaries?
Daniel Horowitz from the Madison Project, and he's also contributor to Red State. It's always awesome talking with you, and it emboldens a lot of people. So just stay encouraged, my friend. There's a lot of people that back what you're doing, and thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you.